Hello, thank you for being here. My name is Shay Griffin, and I am an attorney and mitigation specialist in Texas. I've decided to start this channel to talk about mitigation, what a mitigation specialist is, um, and how we can apply mitigation theories to our own life. And I feel like this is really important right now um, in 2026 because mitigation specialists are always looking for empathy and understanding with people who are often not like us. And in this climate that we're in right now, I feel like talking about ways to understand each other and to find empathy in different opinions and different walks of life is really applicable. So, what is a mitigation specialist? A mitigation specialist is somebody who is generally hired by or works with a defense team. So mitigation specialists are required for capital cases. Um, the ABA guidelines require a somebody qualified to perform mitigation on every capital team. So death penalty. Um, and thankfully, mitigation specialists are getting more and more prevalent in non-capital cases as well. So, for example, I used to work for the federal public defender, and I worked on non-felony cases. So basically, people accused of crimes relating to drugs, guns, sex offenses, anything like that, anything kind of below capital. But you can even have a mitigation specialist on like a probation revocation, um, because the mitigation specialist's job is to interview the client and figure out what they've been going through, figure out what led them to the offense, and then oftentimes a reentry plan as well. And so that's why a mitigation specialist is crucial for any type of defense case. So, how do we do our work? So, I mentioned we interview a client, we learn kind of their life story, and it's our job to corroborate what they're telling us by speaking with family, friends, coaches, teachers, doctors, mental health providers, um, also finding records of everything they've talked about or um, everything that we've learned from other people, trying to find kind of objective records that show um, what they've been through in their life. Not necessarily that they're telling the truth, but just we're putting together their life story um, through every means of corroboration possible. So it's a really fascinating job. I feel like people don't even know that it exists unless you're like right in this field. But like I said, the overall purpose of a mitigation specialist is to get to know somebody who's accused of a crime. It's often somebody who is quite different from the judge, um, whether it be by race, by um, income, upbringing, and find a way to make the person's story relatable to a judge so that we can try to invoke some kind of empathy from the judge. Now, I'm going to go deeper into everything that I've talked about. This is just kind of an intro video. But it's really important to say right off the bat that mitigation is not an excuse. I'm I'm not out here trying to come up with sob stories to say, oh, well, this person, they had a really hard life and that's why they committed the crime and so they shouldn't go to jail. That's not what this is. I feel like that's a huge misconception that anybody who works in defense faces, but especially mitigation specialists. We're not looking for excuses, we're looking for context. So there are so many reasons why people turn to crime that aren't just because they're inherently bad. There's so many reasons. Honestly, Poverty and lack of education, lack of job opportunities is a huge one, and mental health, untreated mental health is another huge reason. And so identifying what somebody has been through and then using that to say, hey, if they get some therapy, if they get some medication, if they get some resources, things can be different. And also looking at what are called protective factors and risk factors. So this is how two people can go through similar situations, and the person with more risk factors could end up making a bad decision along the way, and the person with more protective factors can have gone through something really bad, but been given resources and had money and support, and they're able to come out of the bad thing that happened to them without turning to crime. So it's a really fascinating, multifaceted investigation that goes on with every single person. And I think this is a good time to say mitigation specialists are typically people who have master's degrees in social work, psychology, criminal justice. I think those are the big ones. And then there's a few people like me, I think, who who are attorneys or have JDs. So, you know, I do practice law, um, but this is my main focus area because I find it so fascinating. I love getting to meet people and come to understand them and get to know them, get to know their story, and then be able to not just hear them and sympathize, but actually be able to then present it to the attorneys and to the judge and really kind of help them sometimes have personal breakthroughs or come out with a solid reentry plan or somehow help them, um, when they're at like a really dark point. So let me see. I think that's a good place to start. Um, like I said, I want to do several videos because this job is so interesting, and I think so much of it can apply to our everyday lives. I'm going to talk about how mitigation specialists came to be historically. It's super interesting. I'm going to talk about ways to build rapport. I'm going to talk about um, trauma and how that affects children through adulthood. I'm going to talk about um, mental health. Um, I want to talk about how you can apply a lot of tactics that I use into your everyday life to increase, understanding of people. Um, and I just really hope that this is helpful, and I'm here as a resource. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.